The Strand Center for the Arts has a wonderful series called the Artist Salons at the Strand. And if you've never been to one, it's something I would advise you to check out. And I'm very lucky to have an opportunity today to sit down with the next artist that will be having a salon at the Strand. And who's with me today?
I'm Kailey Maher. Nice to talk to you.
What can people expect when they come to a salon?
The Artist Salon, it's a chance for an invited artist to come and to talk about what they're working on or past work or just kind of the process of being an artist. And then we also invite anybody that attends to bring any type of work that they're currently working on. And it's kind of an informal critique that allows new ideas to kind of come to surface. There's a lot of encouragement and it's just a great time to be had by all.
I didn't know the part about inviting people to have the critique, which I think is something like after you get out of school, if you're an artist, like you lose that important criticism that you have with your peers. So it's nice to have that opportunity at least once a month with your peers out in the community.
Oh, absolutely. I know for myself and some fellow artists, having left school recently, we really wanted to try to recreate that type of atmosphere because it is so paramount to our art practices. In doing so, it's been a great resource for other community members and other artists in the community to also be able to engage and talk about their work as well. So it's been really great.
And with your salon that's coming up, I mean, you've had a very big year with your artwork. You did some very interesting stuff with your art, but there is something in your artist statement that I want to bring up because when I read it, it kind of made me feel a way, and that is the ever exposing the causeways of a life lived, unlived, and yet lived. And I grew up on the banks of the Ausable River, and one of my favorite things was seeing how water would etch the stone. And I always would love that when I would see the waves in a rock, and that's what it reminded me of, because you, as you know, working with stone and working with carving, that's kind of like you are participating in that in an organic way, but also in an artistic way by taking a piece of marble or stone and making it yours. And I just wanted to say I loved that, and it made me really identify with your artwork because of that.
Oh, thank you. No, stone's an amazing thing. It holds memory, or at least to me it does. So when I get a chance to work on it, as I'm changing the stone, it is always changing me. It's a really happy little marriage I have between me and stone.
I had a chance to catch up with you last week to ask you a bit about your process, and you are a second generation artist.
Growing up, I actually didn't even realize what a gift it was, but it was absolutely a gift. My grandmother was a stone carver as well, and as a small child, I remember just being around her as she was working. And one of her favorite things to do too when I would come back to visit is she'd kind of come straight up to me and pull me aside and bring me over to these stones that she had been working on, and she'd uncover them because she always kept them covered. And then she'd mist them with a water bottle, which was amazing because what would happen was it would show what was underneath the stone. It was just always these magical moments. I was very lucky with that environment, or she always wanted to formally kind of teach me, but life had kind of gotten really busy, and before I knew it, she wasn't here any longer. And I was very fortunate that my family members had the foresight to box up all her tools and gift them to me, which they lived in my garage for 7 years.
They were waiting for you.
Yeah, I guess. It was a dream that I had to live. But around 30, I decided that if I was ever going to do it, it was now. I had 3 little kids at home. I went back to school, and I showed up with those 2 boxes. And I asked my professor, what do I do? And he says, I'm not exactly sure. He was not trained as a stone carver, but he said, let's figure it out. And that's what we did. And it was the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me. I mean, it's definitely my language. It was like returning home in a way.
Do you ever sometimes feel like she's guiding you and helping you while you do your art?
Oh, absolutely. Between her and my grandfather, there are times when I'm working on the stone where I will just smell her perfume, or I'll smell the oils that he used on his tools. Both of them, I know that they're ever present with me, especially when over during the summer to Italy, there wasn't a day that went by that I didn't feel her there.
Tell people about your Italy experience, because I checked out where you were, and wow, what an opportunity. So I can't even imagine.
The whole residency is amazing. It's called the Digital Stone Project. The director is John Ishwood, and they work with Garfagnana Innovations, where as artists, there was about 22 of us from all over the world. And then from all kind of different backgrounds, we had traditional artists, there were architects, there were designers, and then we transpose a 3D digital image. I kind of worked backwards in a way, but that digital image goes over, and then they actually program a 7-axis robot to start the milling process for the stone. So when we get there, we only have a month to finish this. I think my piece ended up being about 1 meter tall, but it is enough time to be able to finish a marble piece, which is insane because usually it would take much longer. The whole experience was wonderful. The people were amazing. My cohort was amazing. Italian people in general, they're so passionate that I think that it resonates really well with artists because we're very passionate. The whole thing was, unbelievable.
I would just take a guess that it is changed and enriched you as an artist to have that experience.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's going through the process of my art practice and then learning different tools that I can use. I always think the first time that I'm in that place, it's like walking around a dark room with the lights off, and then all of a sudden the lights start to go on. And that's kind of how this experience was for me. I am not digitally based whatsoever. I don't work with robotics. The world seems to be moving in that direction. And how do you maintain this age-old craft of stone carving in this world where it's constantly moving? So you have it's at odds, but this was a really unique way to bridge that. And now that I've had this experience, my mind has just been in a million different directions trying to figure out, like, where do I go from here and how do I take this from here? So it's been amazing.
When you sit down to create, I'm always fascinated with the creation process. And I think that, again, sometimes people don't know it takes what goes into actually completing a complete piece of artwork. So how does your daily process or your actual creative process work?
Well, first I'll say it takes everything. There's a successful piece for me has pushed me beyond where I thought I could be pushed. And that is the true merit of it. And that's when I fall in love with the piece even more. But at the beginning of things, I think that it's always subconsciously working through me, kind of percolating. And a lot of times it will start with some type of poetry that's been created in my head that's lived in that space and lived. And then that poetry gets translated into some type of visualization of it, which usually it's a quick sketch on something. I have all these little note cards and papers all that are, well, they're now neatly in a folder, but usually they're kind of all over, that kind of capture these. And then I'll move through that. That will stay in that state for a while. In this particular piece that I just finished, that rough sketch, I then actually created a maquette out of clay on my living room floor. And then I misfired that, was able to take those digital renderings from there. But it was an interesting component for me because I've never used the language of my ceramic pieces in my stone pieces. It's always been pretty different. In my ceramic process, it's a little bit more regimented. You have to plan, and its clay is very temperamental but also very loving. You're able to nurture it, which is really nice. But I work differently. Usually with stone, I will go into my studio and you put on all this protective equipment. You have ear protection and eye protection, and you wear a respirator, and the machine itself is super loud, and I'm moving my whole body. But it's almost like this dance that ends up happening between me and this stone. But I'm not going in there with kind of a direct idea of what I'm making. This was like the first time that happened, which is probably a good thing. Like having a general idea of what you're doing is one thing that I did like, is that although that spontaneity was kind of not there because I had a maquette that was kind of being made, I still was able to, I was still able to do the things that I love, which is with my hands and then too with my body shape the piece after. So again, it still had that kind of dance element to it, which I kind of discovered while I was over there is super important to me. One of the fellow artists had mentioned how my hands cup the interior of my piece really well, but they do because it was made by my hands. So those little parts of it perfectly fit it, or like the way my hip will hug kind of the figurative form, it does because it is. And then going back to the dancing too, it's very important. I listen to music. I was very lucky to be like across from this other artist, William, who also was a fellow dancer. So we were the odd birds dancing around our pieces the whole time. But that was super important, I think, at least for me, for my practice, because it is, those rhythmic movements allow kind of this really organic quality to kind of come out.
The salon is coming up.
Yeah, so the salon is going to be Thursday, July 27th at 6:30. It is in the main gallery at the Strand Center for the Art. All of that information can be easily found on our website, strandcenter.org, or through our Facebook or Instagram accounts.
I really enjoyed our conversation, and thank you for giving me an idea of how your creative process works. I feel like when I see your art now, I will feel like I understand it a lot more because I understand the personal side of it, which is what I think art is all about. I think it's about the personal side of ourselves, and then we vulnerably share it with the world. The step from making it private to putting it out in public is terrifying, but it's so important. So thank you for your time and sharing your process with me.
Thank you.